Zach's world shatters when he uncovers his wife Lisa's affair with Gerald, a ruthless music critic. With betrayal in his heart, Zach vows revenge. In a shocking confrontation at the hospital, Zach forces Lisa to face her lies. Will he let their marriage burn or light the fuse of explosive retribution? The applause went on for several minutes as everyone celebrated the guest of honor that night. It wasn't the first time Zach had sat and listened to the long applause for his wife, Casey, but this time it felt like the longest. Some of Houston's richest families had come together to support local charities. For the second time in 5 years, Casey was the guest of honor because of her work with the Wall Foundation of Houston. Zach felt very proud of her as she gave her usual inspiring speech, thanking everyone who had helped this year. She glanced at him, and he gave a small shake of his head. Casey smiled at that and thanked her family for being a strong support in her charity work through the years. When she finished, the crowd cheered again, and it was time for the small orchestra. The WOW Foundation always had many musicians ready to play. That night, a talented local singer was performing as well. While the speeches took place, Gabriella, Casey's mother, sat beside Zach and held his hand. Even though she was nearly 70, she was still a stylish woman. She leaned over and quietly said, "You should really let Casey thank you directly. That's why she always looks at you like that." Zach smiled and replied, "My wonderful mother-in-law, if anyone can wear me down, it's you. But we've talked about this. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for her. And you. I will always be grateful to both of you." Gabriella squeezed his hand and said, "That may be true, but you've done so much for our family. Casey wouldn't be able to stand there if it weren't for you. I couldn't ask for a better son-in-law, and I couldn't love you more, even if you were my own son." They both agreed that Casey and Zach had great mentors, and Gabriella smiled. "You can be quite stubborn, Zachariah Davis." He laughed and replied, "Well, I picked that up mostly from your late husband." Gabriella said, "I know, and that makes me love you even more. God took him too soon, but if quality matters more than quantity, he had some very good years." Zach nodded, remembering those years, and added, "He always said it was because of you." Gabriella fought back tears and kissed Zach on the cheek. She missed her husband, but she was healthy and surrounded by a loving family. Zach felt the same way. If it weren't for Sam and Gabriella Ortiz 25 years ago, he might not be married to Casey or enjoying what he has today. As usual, Zach found himself running late. An emergency trip was going to make him rush to the symphony concert that night. He asked Mary, his girlfriend of 4 months, to meet him there and promised her they would have a fantastic evening with great seats waiting for them. Zach picked up his tickets at the theater booth just 5 minutes before the show started, but his date was missing. 5 minutes after the concert began, she still hadn't arrived. He felt frustrated. He waited outside in the chilly February air and tried to call her, but she didn't pick up. A little while later, he got a message. It said she wouldn't come. She couldn't trust him anymore. They were done. He sighed. 4 months of their relationship had vanished. He couldn't blame her. His job was demanding. As an MRI engineer, he only got out when there was a big issue during routine checks. If something went wrong, he had to act quickly. Sadly, these calls often came at the last minute, which meant he had to cancel many plans, including her recent birthday celebration. With another sigh, he decided to go inside and enjoy the show. He quietly made his way to the middle of the hall, about 10 rows from the stage. Almost as soon as he sat down, he noticed Mary, a lovely young woman sitting next to him with her attractive friend. They both looked to be in their late 20s, and the concert had already started. Zach nodded at them, and they smiled back politely. Tonight's performance featured works by Mozart, including several violin pieces. During intermission, Zach asked the ladies, "Good evening. Would you like something to drink?" The pretty one replied, "Mel, thank you, but maybe later." Mindy smiled. "I'm sure he has plans for afterward, but it was nice of you to offer." Zach chuckled. "Well, as you can see, there's an empty seat next to me, so it looks like I got promoted. That means I have no plans afterward. It's a pity because I had reservations at Carol's across the street. I heard the food there is amazing," he asked. "If you don't have plans, would you like to join me afterward? My treat?" Mindy introduced herself. "Nice to meet you, Zach. I'm Mindy, and this is Lisa. I would love to join. I've always wanted to eat there." Lisa added, You can come if you want, but I'm going. Zach liked Mindy. She seemed fun. He hoped both would join him so he could chat with Lisa a bit more. Mindy appeared to enjoy the concert while Lisa seemed a bit more critical of the performance. They talked a little before the second part of the concert began. When the show ended, the orchestra received a big round of applause, and Zach and Mindy joined in, but Lisa remained indifferent. Then she turned to Zach and said, "Let's go to Carol's." Zach felt happy. He had reservations, but they were for 2 people. After explaining the situation to the hostess, he handed her $150, and in no time they were seated at a table. The ladies seemed impressed. Mindy asked, "So Zach, lucky for me you were free, but do you know why your date didn't show up?" "Yes," Zach replied simply. "It's mostly my fault. My job has terrible hours. I can get sent far away at any time, even out of the country. This means I've had to cancel plans with her a lot because of work. I know it's not fair to her. It's too bad because I asked my boss for those great tickets. I wanted to treat her to nice seats and a lovely dinner." "Do you often go to the symphony?" Mindy asked. "Lisa goes to concerts a lot, but I haven't been for a while. Since I'm her roommate, I often feel jealous." Zach looked at Lisa and saw she was deep in thought. After a moment, she said, "I have a degree in accounting, but I also studied music. I used to love performing, but now it's just a hobby." Mindy laughed a little. "She's a great performer, but now she focuses on judging performances instead of taking part in them. She hardly plays anymore." Lisa turned to her friend with a sharp look. Then she replied, "I'm learning to understand music better than before when I was just playing." Zach asked, "Oh, what instrument do you play?" Mindy jumped in. "She plays the violin beautifully. You should hear her." Lisa said, "I still play sometimes to keep my skills sharp, but I wasn't good enough to make it my job." Turning to Mindy, she added, "And that's all I'll say about my performances." Zach could tell this was a tough topic for them. They ordered food and enjoyed their dinner. Zach found out that Lisa worked as an accountant at a local hospital. Mindy was a Montessori teacher who worked with preschoolers. Her school was just 10 minutes from Zach's work. She loved her job, but like many teachers, she didn't earn much money. At the end of the evening, when Zach paid the bill, he said, "I know it's bold of me, but I'd like to see you again. If you don't mind sharing your phone number, I'll call you if you'd like to think about it. Here's my card. I travel for work a lot." Mindy didn't hesitate. "Give me your phone." When he handed it to her, she dialed her number and said, "I like to go out. I enjoy places like this and barbecue. I'm not picky about that." Lisa didn't seem ready to share her number, so Zach thanked them for a great evening and wished them both good night. Late on Monday night, Sam Ortiz, the owner and CEO of Magnolia City Diagnostic Instruments, along with his wife Gabriella, knocked on Zach's door. They asked, "So, how did those tickets go? Did you and Mary have a good time?" Zach laughed and told them about how things didn't go as planned, but he met 2 other women for dinner. Sam was a good CEO and a great boss. Zach had been working for him for almost 9 years, starting as an intern in college, and he enjoyed every moment. Sam was in his early 50s, with some gray starting to show in his hair. Gabrielle was a great cook, which meant Sam needed to watch his weight. Gabrielle was unique, not just because of her looks, but because of her strong personality. She was the only woman Zach felt he needed to treat with respect. Her presence was powerful, like a queen or the head of a girls' school. She was always dressed perfectly and never wore pants or jeans. Zach didn't think she even owned a pair of jeans. She carried herself with confidence, but wasn't annoying about it. Some people on the team thought she was too serious, but Zach saw her as something rare and valuable. She cared for him, too. While her looks might not be above average, she knew how to dress and wear makeup to bring out her best features. Zach and Sam worked well together, both in business and as partners in life. Gabrielle had once worked in the company's accounting department and still helped with financial reports. Her true strength was in helping Sam interview new workers, including Zach many years ago. She also took part in local charity work. They had 3 children, all around Zach's age. Their oldest son had just become a surgeon. The middle daughter was studying medicine and engineering, and the youngest son had just graduated as an engineer. It seemed the children were good people like their parents. Sam said, "I'm sorry about what happened with Mary, but if you still have 2 new friends, I hope your next girlfriend will be more understanding." "You know, I won't ask you to go on business trips forever, right?" Zach replied. "I know. Thanks. Honestly, I enjoy my job fixing these machines. They're important for hospitals and their patients. I'm okay with the busy life for a bit longer. Maybe in a few years we'll find ways to cut back on trips. Or hopefully we'll grow enough to hire more engineers in each area so we can travel less, Sam said with a smile. That's the goal, Zach. And I hope one of those two girls turns out to be the right one. Sam always wished Zach would find someone good. Gabrielle often commented for him to choose his girlfriends carefully, which made Zach and Sam laugh together. The next day, Zach was surprised to see a message from Lisa on his phone. Hey, Zach, call me when you can. He called her that evening and they made plans to go out that weekend. When Zach picked Lisa up for dinner, she looked stunning in a beautiful knee-length black dress that was eye-catching without being too revealing. Mindy was home, and she smiled sadly, wishing them a good time as Lisa joined Zach. Mindy and I talked and decided to be a couple first. She wanted someone who didn't travel a lot. Zach didn't seem to mind, especially since Mindy was charming. Lisa was beautiful. She had dark brown hair and light skin, stood about 5.5 feet tall, and was fit with a nice figure. A lot of people would envy Zach that evening. So they started a relationship that grew quickly. A few weeks later, he invited her to meet his brother and sister-in-law who lived in Houston at a restaurant near her work. Lisa went straight from work, and when she arrived, she saw a lovely woman talking to Zach at the bar, clearly enjoying his company. Not wanting anyone to come between them, Lisa walked over and said, "Hi, honey," before giving him a big kiss. The other woman looked surprised, and Zach seemed shocked too. When Lisa pulled away, she felt a hand on her shoulder and heard, "Hey, Lisa, I see you've met my twin brother Daniel and his wife Gina." Lisa stepped back, realizing what had just happened. She quickly put Zach between her and Gina and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought someone was flirting with Zach." Then she turned to Zach and added, "You didn't tell me you had a twin brother. I didn't expect you to act like that." Daniel smiled and said, "Nice to meet you, Lisa." Gina wasn't pleased, even if it was just a misunderstanding. To ease the mood, Lisa asked Gina about her job. Gina replied, "When I'm not keeping my husband in check, I work in procurement at Exxon." Daniel chimed in, "I'm a lawyer, what about you?" Lisa then shared about her work at the hospital. After they all sat down, they laughed a bit about what had happened and had a nice evening together. Over the following months, Lisa never blamed Zach for his business trips. He would call when he was away, and they would talk on the phone for almost an hour. She felt sad when he left, but was always happy to see him come back. When he was gone for more than 2 or 3 days, she wasn't just happy. She felt relieved that he was home. Zach liked knowing that Lisa missed him. Gina even introduced Mindy to one of her friends from Exxon, Robert, who was doing really well at his job, moving up from the oil fields to a management position, and they hit it off right away. When Zach and Lisa talked about being exclusive, Zach asked, "Will it be a problem that I'm often away?" Lisa laughed a little before answering, "Honey, you already said the longest you'd be gone is 2 weeks, and usually it's just 2 or 3 days. I think I can handle 2 weeks without you. Besides, I can work late or Mindy and I can make plans." A few months later, when Christmas came, Zach and Lisa spent time with each other's families. Lisa's family lived in Houston, too. They were a simple, happy family in a nice neighborhood. Her parents seemed to really like Zach, which made everyone at Zach's house feel good. On Christmas Day, Lisa met Zach's older sister Miriam, along with her husband and their 2 small children who lived in Austin. Some other relatives visited, and soon it turned into a big Davis family celebration. Zach's Uncle Jack brought a violin and played some music for the kids. Before long, everyone started clapping to the beat. When Uncle Jack took a break, Zach turned to Lisa and asked her to play something. She looked at him sadly and replied, "You know I don't play anymore. I don't enjoy it and they don't want to hear me." Naturally, this led everyone to encourage her to play. Lisa gave Zach a pleading look, but since he had rarely heard her play, he insisted on just one song. After a bit of hesitation, she took the violin. She played a few notes to get comfortable and tuned the strings just the way she liked. Then she began to play Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. This song had become famous because it was in the movie Shrek and had many covers. All the listeners were amazed by her talent and heartfelt playing. She only played one verse, but when she finished, everyone sat in surprise until her Uncle Jack started clapping loudly. Soon, everyone joined in with applause and Lisa felt herself blush. Jack said, "Wow, Lisa, I'm nervous to play after that. It's like a whole new violin." She softly replied, "Thank you." Zach hugged her tightly, and then his parents joined in the hug. His mom said, "Lisa, you should play more often. Anyone who plays like that has a gift worth sharing." "Thank you," Lisa replied. "But when I saw I wasn't good enough to play professionally, it took a lot of the fun away." Zach's dad said, "Lisa, anyone who plays like that is better than most people. You need to let us hear you play, at least for me." "Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'll think about it," Lisa said, noticing how well everyone got along with her during the holiday, even with Gina. Zach felt he was ready for the next step once their vacation ended. He bought a beautiful ring and decided to talk to Sam the next day at work. At the end of the workday, Zach knocked on Sam's office door and was happy to find her there. "Mrs. Ortiz, do you have a minute?" he asked. "Sure, Zach, come in. What's on your mind?" Instead of sitting across from her, they started a conversation. The three of them moved to a more comfortable couch with chairs around the coffee table. Zach enjoyed watching Mrs. Ortiz. Just seeing her sit there was beautiful. Every little move she made had meaning and grace. Today, she wore a midi-length dress with a matching cape and 3-inch heels. Her scarf and jewelry added to her elegance. Zach said, "I want to show you something." He took a box with a ring from his jacket and handed it to Mrs. Ortiz, who seemed a bit tense right away. She quickly looked at the ring and then handed it to her husband. After a moment, he said, "Very pretty. Zach, are you sure Lisa is the one?" Zach smiled at them both and replied, "Well, the woman I would like to marry is already here in this room, so Lisa is my next choice." Breaking the serious mood, Gabriella laughed and stood up. "Congratulations, Zachariah," she said, using his full name like she always did with him and Sam. "I'm happy for you." She turned and quickly left the room. Zach looked at Sam, confused, and asked, "Did I upset her with what I said? Should I apologize?" "No, Zach. It was a very nice compliment, and it meant a lot to her coming from you," Sam replied. "I promise. She thinks very highly of you." "Then why do I feel like I did something wrong?" Zach asked. "She's just emotional. Don't worry about it. She's happy for you. We both are." "Thank you, Sam. Your opinion and hers mean a lot to me." "Well, you mean a lot to us. She has loved you from day one. Maybe that's why you two get along so well. Not everyone sees things the way we do." "Some do, but most look for future partners in nightclubs," Zach laughed. "Probably, but I get your point. So what do you remember about the day you interviewed with us?" "You spoke to 3 managers, and at the end, she and I spoke together," Zach said. "I remember being very scared. I really wanted this internship, but there were 10 of us that day, and they said there would be 10 more the next day for only 3 spots. Sam jumped in. It was because the price of oil was going down, so local oil companies were hiring less. Many top specialists interviewed with us when they normally wouldn't have. As you know, we hired 4 interns that year." Zach replied, "I know, and I was up against the best. I remember that Mrs. Ortiz didn't ask a single question or say a word during the interview. She just sat next to you and took notes. At first, I thought she was your assistant." During lunch, all the candidates stood at the table waiting to be seated, and she sent out name cards to show who would sit where. You and the managers were at one end of the table, and Mrs. Ortiz was at the other. She sat me down next to her. Other people tried to get your attention, and I thought that sitting far from you meant I wouldn't have a chance at one of the spots. So I focused on having a good chat with her instead. At first she seemed a bit distant, but soon we were enjoying ourselves and I forgot all about you. Sam said, "Honestly, I'd rather be where you are at the table." When we finished, she thanked me for a lovely lunch and said she hoped to see me at work. I thanked her too, shook hands with you and the managers, and then I left, thinking it was unlikely I would get one of the spots. Now, 9 years later, can you tell me what happened? "I'm still unsure," Sam replied. "She picked these places herself." The other 3 managers looked at skills and experience, while she and I looked at how well the new employee would fit in with the team. Everyone we talked to was qualified. I didn't find extra points on their scores important. When you walked out of our interview, Gabby said, "Hire him," and so we did. You didn't have to struggle for attention during lunch. You were already accepted. You could have made things awkward by sitting close to her, but instead, you won her over even more. I still remember what we had for dinner that weekend because of you. We ate manicotti. She shared how you helped your ex-girlfriend's parents in the kitchen. She loved your idea about using a baking sleeve to fill the manicotti tubes and couldn't wait to try it. And that's exactly what she did that weekend. On her way back home, she laughed about how you and one of your ex-girlfriend's fathers used to roll around in the mud a few months after breaking up. I chuckled when she said that breaking up was harder for you and him than it was for her and you. My clearest memory of that day was watching her laugh and talk with you. You know her now, and you know that this is not typical for her. I'm telling you this because I want you to see how much she cares about you. Do you have a special bond with her? Zach asked. How did you two meet before she became Mrs. Gabriela Ortiz? Sam chuckled. I don't know about Mrs. Ortiz, but when we met, she was just a girl, a young woman who was very proper. My family didn't have much when she was younger, but they taught her good manners and the importance of doing what's right. We met at a local food bank when we were in college. She volunteered there 2 Sundays a month because, like me, she didn't have much money. My parents' church encouraged some of us to go, and I literally bumped into her. I won't say it was love at first sight, but she had a special quality that has only grown since then. I may run the company, but every big decision in my life has been talked about with her first. She is truly my partner, and I am a better person because of her, Sam continued. Don't worry about her. I promise you that she wants you to be happy. This is what she wishes for you. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Please tell her that I hope I didn't hurt her feelings. I really value our friendship. I understand what matters to you now, Sam said. He stood up, and Zach did the same. Let me know when Lisa picks a date so we can plan a vacation for your honeymoon. Sam gave him a friendly pat on the back and wished him a good evening. Zach thought about proposing to Lisa on Valentine's Day, but he felt it was too expected. Plus, he wanted to get married soon. The longer he waited, the more chores piled up. The next weekend, he took her back to Arturo's restaurant. In a quiet corner, he asked her to marry him. She smiled and said yes with excitement. Their wedding happened at the end of May, with many family and friends attending. Her parents looked very happy. Sam and Gabriela were there, and Zach even enjoyed a couple of nice dances with Gabriela at the reception. After that, Zach and Lisa flew to the Caribbean for a week-long honeymoon before starting their happy life together. Mindy and Robert got engaged and married not long after, and the two couples spent many weekends together. Sometimes Daniel and Gina would join them, and Zach's weekends in town were always fun. David's family gatherings welcomed Mindy and Robert, and Lisa sometimes played music. They found out that Mindy had a beautiful voice, and it blended well with Lisa's singing. The first 3 years were a wonderful time for Zach and Lisa, especially after he came back from deployments 3 years after their wedding. Big changes started to happen in their lives. The first big change was Lisa's promotion at the hospital, which came with more responsibilities and a higher salary. The hospital where Lisa worked was part of a larger group in Texas, and she mentioned that she would need to travel to Austin sometimes. Zach hoped they could plan his trips around hers, as his schedule had become more regular. The reason for this regularity was that Sam wanted Zach to lead the production and testing of 2 new types of ultrasonic sensors. These sensors were designed in Vienna and would be made in Munich, Germany. The first sensor was a new model that was meant to be more sensitive, with better computer and graphics capabilities. It could create 3-dimensional images of the body's soft tissues, similar to MRI scans, but at a much lower price. The second sensor was much smaller and made to work with iPhones and tablets. It was meant for use in ambulances, field hospitals, and other remote places. This company was ready to compete with the big names in this field. It was a big responsibility, but also a great opportunity for Zach in his job. The new testing schedule made Sam's calendar easier to manage. He hired his daughter, Cassandra, known as Cassie by many, to work with him. She would join the research and development team, but no one was clear on her exact duties. Most people thought she and her younger brother would be prepared to lead the company one day. This made some junior employees a bit doubtful. The big news was Mindy and Robert announcing they were going to have a baby. Mindy was already 5 months along and her belly was just showing. This news added pressure on Lisa, who wanted children but didn't feel ready yet. As Mindy's best friend, Lisa started to question if she was truly prepared for this change. She shared her feelings with Zach, saying, "I really want kids soon, but with our travel plans, I'm not sure. I don't want to be away from the baby." Zach listened and said, "I understand. Let's see how your trips go. If I travel less, maybe we can look into this." Lisa loved the idea and felt happy sharing this with Zach that evening. A month later, Lisa went to Austin for her first trip while Zach had to return to Germany for a week. Both had successful trips and were glad to be back together. A few weeks later, Zach had another trip to Germany and several short trips in the U.S. 2 months after Lisa was promoted, Zach suddenly needed to fly to Los Angeles to fix a broken MRI machine. As soon as he got there, he received a call from his brother Daniel. "Hey, brother, what's up?" Zach asked. Daniel replied, "I need you to do me a favor while you're there." Zach responded, "Sure, what do you need?" Daniel said, "Call me when you start planning to come home." Zach was confused. "What? Is everything okay with Lisa and Jean? Do you want me to come back right now?" Daniel reassured him, "No, it's not like that. I have something I want you to do for me before you come home." Zach felt puzzled, but replied, "Okay, I don't get what's going on, but I'll fix the MRI in less than a day. Expect my call tomorrow." "Thanks, Zach. I love you," Daniel said. "I love you too," Zach thought, feeling a bit unsure. The next day around noon, Zach called Daniel. "Hey, Daniel, I'm almost finished and planning to take a night flight back. What do you need?" Daniel asked. "Did you tell Lisa you're coming home?" Zach said, "No, I called you first. What's wrong?" Daniel suggested, "Can you call or text her and let her know you'll be home in a day or two? Then still take the night flight and come straight to my house. Gina and I need to talk to you." Zach was worried and asked, "Is everything all right with Mom and Dad? Why all the secrecy?" Daniel replied, "Don't panic. Everything is fine. I just need you to help me with this. Just this once." Zach agreed. "Okay, my flight gets in at 5 a.m., so I should be with you before 6. Daniel said, "We'll make coffee and breakfast for you." Zach replied, "Great." He wrote to Lisa, "I need to stay a day, maybe 2. I will let you know." "Sorry," Lisa replied. "Oh, that's too bad. I was really looking forward to seeing you again." "I'll go with Mindy to do some shopping for the baby," he replied. "I'm glad it's not me. Babies need so much stuff." "Love you," Lisa said. "I love you more," he replied. Zach was lucky he only had paperwork to do because he had trouble focusing for the rest of his time at the hospital. He took a taxi to the airport, slumped into a seat in the waiting area, and took a quick nap. After hardly sleeping the night before, working on the MRI, his 3-hour flight took off at midnight and landed at 5 a.m. He knocked on his brother's door just before 6 a.m. Gina and Daniel were waiting for him. The kids were still asleep. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in hand, Daniel asked, "What time does Lisa usually come to work?" "A few minutes before. Why?" "Don't worry, you'll see her soon." "Daniel, you and Gina are acting so mysterious." "Just tell me what you need," Zach said. "I need you to trust me, brother. Just this once. Be a little patient. We know this is tough for you." Zach nibbled at his breakfast, but finished his coffee. Soon they were off in Daniel's car. Zach asked, "Why are we going to Lisa's house?" "Be quiet. We're almost there," Daniel replied. "What's going on?" They turned onto a quiet street in a nice neighborhood with large houses and yards. It was about 10 minutes from the hospital where Lisa worked. "Please, Zach, for once just sit and watch. I need you to keep an eye on this house." Daniel pointed across the street at a house a bit further away. "No matter what happens, keep quiet and sit on your hands if you have to." Daniel locked the car doors. "Is this about Lisa? Am I going to see her come out of some house?" "She's probably visiting a friend," Daniel answered. "I hope so. Here, read this." He handed Zach a newspaper. Zach looked at the paper and saw a picture of Lisa with a man who looked to be in his early 40s, standing on the sidewalk outside a theater. The man was in a tuxedo and Lisa wore a fancy dress. She was holding his hand, and her engagement ring was easy to see, but her wedding ring was missing. The caption read, "Austin's Reginald Aldridge, famous music critic, and his longtime girlfriend Lisa Jennings, attend the evening performance. Jennings is Lisa's maiden name." Daniel noticed the confusion on Zach's face. "Miriam sent me this while you were in Germany and Lisa was in Austin. This article has more details. Read it all. The article is still online and has a picture of them kissing." I have a private investigator's report at home with more details than you might want to hear. This isn't just a casual connection, Zach. Daniel watched his brother, Zach, feeling very sad. Zach had hoped for a simple visit, but the truth was hitting him hard. Daniel started walking back to his house. Zach was reading an article about Reginald, a well-known music critic in Texas who wrote reviews for many newspapers. Reginald was a music teacher at Rice University, where Lisa went to school. He was about to take a new job at the University of Texas at Austin, where he grew up. The article was nice and let him share his thoughts and experiences. Zach wondered why Reginald was so tough on his reviews. He wanted everything to be perfect and expected that from his audience, too. Zach thought about Reginald's hobbies. He spent a lot of time fixing up the old house he bought last year and loved to cook Italian meals on the old stove. He also enjoyed listening to great music in his special listening room. In his personal life, Reginald was happy with his girlfriend and didn't want to change anything about that. When they reached Daniel's house, Gina had already left to take the kids to preschool. "She'll be back soon," Daniel said. Zach replied, "Let me call work before I look at the investigator's file. I can't work today." He called his boss, Frank, and explained that he had serious family issues and would need a few days off. Frank asked if everything was okay and where Zach was. He told Zach to take care of what he needed to and to keep him posted. After hanging up, Zach started looking through the file. "Daniel, I can't believe you hired an investigator for me. He must be really good to put this together so fast." Daniel nodded. "We have several detectives, and he's one of the best. He owed me a favor, so he worked fast. Unfortunately, it was pretty easy for him. If you were on a trip, she often spent the night with him." Zach looked surprised. "Don't you have a security system? If it tracks things, you probably wouldn't see anything when you were away," Daniel said. Zach sat down, feeling foolish. "I never checked. I never thought anything was wrong." Daniel responded, "I know, man. We were all surprised. We liked her. Besides her not wanting to play music, she seemed just like one of us." Zach thought for a moment and said, "I didn't notice anything strange. The only odd thing was that the longer I was gone, the more she seemed to miss me. I thought she was just lonely, but it turns out she had someone else." Daniel shook his head, looking at the folder that had a lot of details Zach never knew about Lisa or Reginald. The information about Lisa was hard to read. She had been the first violinist in the Houston Youth Orchestra until she went to college. She stopped playing around the same time she became Reginald's student. No one explained anything. The private investigator had access to Reggie's house, where it looked like Lisa had made a second home for herself. She had some clothes and other personal items there. When Zach was away, Lisa didn't need to go back to her own place. She would drive from work to Reggie's, open the garage, and go inside. Everyone in the neighborhood thought she lived there with Reggie. People in the Houston music scene knew he had a long-term girlfriend, but no one had talked to the detective about her. Gina had come back by then, and she and Daniel were trying to keep themselves busy while Zach worked on his report. Reggie's past was not very nice. He was a wealthy man from Austin who became the main music critic in the state. 2 conductors left Texas because Reggie made audiences too critical of the music instead of helping them enjoy it. These conductors went to places where their work was valued. Reggie's harsh reviews were liked by some local leaders, but many performers also left because they were tired of the negativity. They felt there was a growing divide between the artists and the audience. The private investigator's report included an article from a small Houston newspaper. It talked about a lead singer who was very upset because her husband had cheated on her. She was also hurt by Reggie leaving her right before her solo show. The article said she put her heart into her music, but Reggie's mean review made her quit the symphony orchestra and she didn't want to perform again. About a week later, she took her own life because, after losing both her husband and her music, she felt she had nothing left. Big newspapers in Houston didn't cover the story. Daniel had heard someone say that Reggie was bad news. Also, there were some high school reports from seniors that accused him of inappropriate behavior, but the school kept them quiet. It seemed Lisa wasn't his only girlfriend. The report contained a lot of details about Reggie's house, its layout, and photos of the inside. There were also videos and images of Reggie and Lisa spending time together stored on a personal cloud account. But Zach was told not to look at them if he wanted to win Lisa back. He didn't plan to do that. After going through everything in the folder, Zach made himself some coffee and joined Daniel and Gina in the kitchen. They prepared for their next talk, but just as they were about to start, the doorbell rang. Daniel went to answer it, and Zach heard a voice say, "Excuse me, is Zachariah here?" It was Mrs. Gabriel Ortiz, and she had a pair of jeans. When she spotted Zach, she walked over, hugged him, and greeted him kindly. "Frank called Samuel, who then called me when I heard about the issues in your family. I knew this was not about work. I rushed over as soon as I could. Everyone looked at her in shock. She spoke again. Come on, I'm not naive. I know you, Zachariah. You've been with us for almost 12 years, and I think you've only missed one day of work. For you to take more than one day off because of family issues must mean something serious." Zach smiled back. If he had never said it before, he definitely felt he cared for this woman. He hugged her and asked, "Daniel and I are twins. How do you know it wasn't me who opened the door?" She replied, "Because your brother looks at me in a different way than you do. Even if you two wore the same clothes, I could always tell you apart." She continued, "I'm guessing we're talking about Lisa." Zach nodded. "Is she being unfaithful? Are you sure?" Gabriella asked. Zach answered, "We have proof. There's no doubt about it." She then asked, "What are you going to do?" Daniel said, "We wanted to be sure he was here with us when he found out. Miriam, his sister, works at a bank in Austin. I saw the photo and sent it to us." Daniel turned to Zach and added, "After what happened with you and Scotty Mitchell, she didn't want you to be alone." Gabriella asked, "Who is Scotty Mitchell?" Gina replied, "I just found out myself. It seems when Zach and Daniel were playing high school football, the team's quarterback, Scotty, got Daniel's girlfriend to go out with him for a weekend during the season. Then he bragged and lied on Monday at school, telling the football players he had been with her. Daniel was heartbroken, and Zach was angry that a teammate would do this to them. No one on the team liked Scotty, so the next day during practice, Zach, who played linebacker, had one of the offensive linemen warn him when a certain play was called. When that play happened, the offensive lineman didn't block Zach. Scotty was looking away from Zach when Zach charged in. Even though Scotty was wearing a bright red jersey, Zach lowered his shoulder and crashed into the quarterback's arm with full force, breaking it. The coach was furious and kicked Zach off the team. Zach said, "It was good for me, though. Instead of trying to play at a small school far away, I focused on my studies and went to California State University. If not for Scotty, I might have ended up in Richmond or Louisville or somewhere small." Gabrielle laughed. "Remind me to send him a Christmas card," which made everyone smile. Miriam was worried, saying that if Zach did this to Scotty, what would he do to Gerald? Zach said, "Mrs. Ortiz, Daniel is right. This man is a danger to society, and I have a plan to help. I appreciate you coming here, but you might not want to hear what I'm thinking." She interrupted him. "That's silly. It looks like you need a good reason for being here. And you already have a lawyer who can keep everyone out of trouble. You just have to be clever." For the second time that morning, everyone turned to Gabriella. She said, "I know you all think I'm too proud and bossy, but no one harms my family. No one. That's enough. Watch your words, Zachary. Doing the right thing doesn't mean you should use bad language." "Yes, ma'am." Gina laughed and Gabriella smiled. She liked Gina as well. Zach also showed Gabriella the private investigator's report so she could understand what was happening. They spent an hour planning, coming up with and dismissing crazy ideas. Zach almost cried when Gabriella suggested they should just knock him out and take away his power quickly and easily. He had never seen this side of her and found it amusing. Daniel let them keep going until he finally said, "Each of these ideas will make people think it's a jealous partner. An investigation will start, and Zach might end up in jail." "It's time to be serious," Gina said. Too bad the private investigator didn't mention the plane being tampered with to seem like an accident. This gave Zach an idea. He said, "I have a thought. Mrs. Ortiz, I need Sam to send me back to Germany." The four of them talked about the idea until they felt okay with it, or at least as okay as one could feel when possibly facing jail time for what Zach was planning. Zach texted Lisa, "I need to stay one more day." "Why?" "Shopping for baby stuff with Mindy." "Is there anything left for the other kids?" Lisa replied. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Come back soon." "Yes, we had a great time. We left some things for others. Her credit card was maxed out." Zach sent another message. "I'll call you later," Lisa replied. "I miss you." When Zach showed everyone the messages, they all shook their heads. Gabriella said, "You know, Zachary, she'll be surprised when all of this happens. I bet she really cares about you." Zach shrugged. "Not enough, obviously. I feel upset that she was sweet and loving on the phone when she spoke to me while I was traveling. I don't want to be married to someone who can lie so smoothly." The others agreed with him. Zach said, "Speaking of lies, later today I'm going to talk to her best friend Mindy, who helped her cover for her." Gabriella was keeping an eye on Zach since even though he was with Daniel and Gina, she didn't want to lose track of him. At lunch, Mindy said, "Zachary, you don't have to call me Mrs. Ortiz. Most people at work call me Gabriella. I'm not sure I can do that. Mrs. Ortiz, talking to you feels like calling someone really important, like Queen Elizabeth or Pope Francis. I think about you more than them. Sometimes when I see you, I feel like I should bow or show a lot of respect, like those people in India who touch their elders' feet, which I've always thought was a nice gesture." Gabriella chuckled. "I appreciate that, Zachary, but I'm just an ordinary woman doing my best for my family." Zach laughed. "Sorry, Mrs. Ortiz, but I can't see you that way. Saying you're just a woman is like calling Beethoven just a musician or Michelangelo just a painter. If Daniel had a swimming pool, you could walk on it like it was solid ground. You can ask others to call you by your name, but I can't do that." Everyone in the room could see how much he admired Gabriella. Her eyes filled with tears from his sweet words. She smiled at the young man she had taken care of for so long, squeezed his hand, and said, "We'll work on it." That day, Zach drove to Mindy's school a little early. The building was old and worn, but he had heard great things about it. Mindy told him that parents were very happy with the school. When he arrived, the office let him in and called Mindy to meet him. His visit was different, but it shouldn't have made her worried enough to tell Lisa before he got there. When they saw each other, they greeted with a hug, and Zach kept his folder close. Mindy smiled, saying, "Zach, what a nice surprise. What are you doing here? I wanted to check how baby shopping is going and if you need anything. How is Robert?" She laughed. "Oh, Robert is fine. He loves late-night ice cream and fried chicken runs. We've been doing all right for a while." When Zach showed her his phone with text messages between him and Lisa from that morning, he grinned. "That's the funny thing about lying for a long time. You start to forget the truth, so you aren't as careful as you used to be. Tell me, Mindy, is your credit card still hurting from last night?" Mindy looked startled. She could try to lie, but it was clear that she knew what was going on. "I don't know what to say. There must be some mistake." Zach slid a newspaper article toward her, showing a picture of Lisa and Gerald out together. "Enough, Mindy. You've been her best friend since 3rd grade. I know you know. Lisa used to cover for her for years. You know how many times I was away and Lisa told you she was busy when she wasn't? So what are you going to tell me? How long has this been happening and why?" "I'm sorry, Zach. Honestly, I can't tell you what I don't know. Mindy, here's what will happen now." His voice was getting louder. "You need to tell me everything you know about her and that guy. If you don't, I'll send this link to a video of Lisa with him to Robert and tell him you helped keep it quiet. Then you can explain to both of us what's going on. I'm giving you a chance here. Being close to Lisa, you might not see that men really dislike it when their partners hide things about other people cheating. It makes them think it's okay and that they might do it too. It's strange how that works. I wouldn't want that for you either. Robert is struggling during what should be one of the happiest times in your child's life." Mindy's face looked scared as she pleaded, "Please. I tried to get her to stop seeing him. You have to believe me. I can't stand that man. He almost ruined her. I don't understand it either, so you need to help me by sharing everything you know." She told him everything about Lisa's first meeting with Gerald, how she became drawn to the charming professor who was an expert in music. He had to know his stuff because he was a well-known teacher and critic, right? He criticized her acting just like everyone else. He put her down so much that she stopped enjoying it. On top of that, she was very taken with him, and they became close. Mindy went on, "Zach, do you remember the night we met? The reason I was with her was because Gerald had tickets to a concert in Dallas, and we used them. I liked you, and Lisa was not really into it. After we broke up, Lisa thought about your trips and decided you were good for her. Because she wanted to keep seeing both of you? I wasn't really into the idea of traveling that much. I thought it might be interesting to try, though. That's why I was upset the night you went on your first date with her. Lisa wanted to test the waters first so she could have both of you. I told her it wasn't a good plan. After you got engaged, I told her to quit, but she never listened. He didn't want kids, but she did. She thought she could have a family with you and still see him sometimes. She was living a double life, and I think it hurt her. He was the dark part of her life, and you were the light. That's why she acted the way she did. I was worried when you were away. He asked. I don't understand. If that's the case, why does she stay with him? I don't know. My best guess is she misses her music, whether she admits it or not. He took that from her. Now I think she stays hoping he'll bring back her music from before she met him. Playing the violin meant everything to her. Or maybe it's a kind of attachment to him. That's all I can come up with. What will you do now? I'm not sure yet. He lied. Please talk to her. Zach, she needs you. If she only has him, I will be very worried for her. I can't promise anything, but I won't tell Robert until 2 months after the baby arrives. If everything goes as planned, you have about 4 months to tell him, or I will. Zach, please don't make me do this. If her relationship is ending, Robert doesn't need to know. That's where you're wrong, Mindy. You shouldn't keep things from him. Hiding the truth can lead to bigger problems. I'm not talking about small secrets like planning surprises for birthdays or holidays. Once you start withholding the truth, it can lead to more trouble if your partner finds out. They may start to question what else you've been hiding. Robert deserves to know the truth, Zach said. Once this comes out, he will ask you questions. I'm giving you a chance to be honest first. He'll be more likely to forgive you if you tell him, not someone else. Mindy began to cry as she faced her reality. The baby was due in 2 months, and she worried about how Robert would take the news. Zach added, Of course you won't tell her about our talk. If I find out you did, I will tell Robert everything I know. Mindy nodded, understanding the weight of her situation. Please give her a chance, Zach. She needs you in her life. Zach chuckled at this and stood up to leave. Remember, tell Robert, but be careful what you tell Lisa. Mindy looked at him with fear as he walked away without another word, pretending to come back the next day like usual. Lisa was glad to see him and stayed close that evening. There was no sign of trouble, and she slept with her arms around him like she always did. After returning to their apartment a couple of weeks later, he had to leave for Germany again, and Lisa was sad to see him go. That evening, about 30 minutes after sunset, Lisa was relaxing at Gerald's house when she got a text from Zach. Surprise! Plans have changed. I'm at the airport. Want me to grab Chinese food on the way home? Lisa replied, Sounds great. I can't wait. She didn't need to hurry, but she felt the need to get home. There wasn't even a kiss goodbye when she left Gerald's. After she left, Gerald went upstairs to his music room and started practicing for the next concert. The volume was loud enough to mimic a live orchestra. Zach was shocked that the neighbors didn't complain. He slipped in through the back door with a spare key hidden in Lisa's purse. He quietly walked into the kitchen and used a long tool to quickly remove the wax and tape he had used to seal a hole earlier in the week. He heard gas start to escape from the hole. Now comes the tricky part. How far should Lisa place her candles from the stove? Gerald knew it needed to be a safe distance so he could smell the gas before it became dangerous. He tried to figure this out while using the Wi-Fi at a cafe on an old tablet, which he later wiped clean and threw away. After leaving Gerald's house, he met up with his brother who had taken his place during a trip to Germany. Once he got his phone back, he went out for Chinese food. Now, all he could do was go home, pretend to be sick, and wait, knowing what he had done. He didn't have to pretend much. He really felt terrible. Lisa was happy to see him and worried about his illness. She put the Chinese food in the fridge, warmed him some chicken broth, and helped him to bed. He hardly slept all night because of his guilt. The next morning, he woke up at 5 a.m. and quietly checked the local news online without looking for anything specific. He found an article about a gas explosion at a house in Gerald's neighborhood. The person living there had been taken to the hospital and was in serious condition. This was bad news. Zach quickly took a shower and left for work before Lisa woke up. Around mid-morning, he drove to the hospital where Gerald had been taken. It was the same hospital where Lisa worked. He saw a hospital worker sitting on a bench outside. Zach walked over, sat down, and said he would pay $50 for information about the patient. The worker shook his head and said for $100 he could help. Zach asked if he could get the details right away since he needed to learn about the man from the gas explosion. After a moment, the worker agreed and went inside the hospital. About 15 minutes later, he came back. The guy is in bad shape, but he'll likely pull through. The explosion hurt his ears, but he should get most of his hearing back. His spine is injured, and he'll need a lot of therapy before he can walk again, but everything else is minor. He has a few broken bones and burns from the fire, but luckily nothing too serious. They're keeping him asleep for a few days to monitor his spine. Zach asked, "What's your connection to him?" The worker replied, "I'm just a neighbor." Zach then stood up, left $250 bills on the bench, and went into the hospital. He found the room number for Gerald in the ICU and went to the waiting area where he called his brother, who promised to inform Mindy. Mindy was supposed to call Lisa to let her know about Gerald's situation. Zach waited anxiously. Less than 10 minutes passed when he saw someone rushing down the corridor. He didn't need to guess who it was. He found a nurse and paid her $100 for her help. He followed her to the door of Gerald's room, where he could hear his wife crying. There was a reason to be hopeful, even though he didn't know everything. He could see that most of Gerald's body was wrapped in bandages. His right arm and leg were in casts, and there was a neck brace supporting his head. The nurse went into the room and noticed Lisa sitting by the bed. She started to read Gerald's chart. Then, she moved to the other side of the bed so Lisa could see her and asked, "Are you his wife?" Lisa shook her head. "Girlfriend?" Lisa nodded, not even realizing that her wedding ring gave her away. "How long have you been together?" Lisa nodded again. "About 10 years." The nurse replied, "Wow, that's a long time. Does your husband know?" Lisa quickly hid her left hand behind her back to cover her ring. Just then, a voice spoke up from behind her. "Now he knows." Lisa turned around, shocked to see her husband standing there. The nurse hurried out, warning, "If I hear any shouting, I will have to ask you both to leave." They both nodded, agreeing to keep quiet. Lisa asked, "What are you doing here?" He replied, "I wanted to see if I could invite my wife to an early dinner. Your boyfriend doesn't look too good." Lisa flinched at his words, but stayed silent. "Cat got your tongue?" he teased. "At least you're smart enough not to deny it." "I expected this from you," he said with a laugh. "You have no idea how much this hurts me. Our marriage just fell apart, and you say it didn't hurt me?" Lisa replied, "You should try harder. I never ignored you. You always came first. I just spent time with Gerald while you were away." "Sounds like you plan to spend more time with him when he moves to Austin," he said. The look on her face showed he was right, and she was surprised he knew about it. "Maybe I know more than you think," he continued. "But what I really want to understand is why I treated you badly." "I know. Did our life get bad?" He replied, "No, I was lazy." "In what ways?" she asked. "Was it us or our life?" "No," he said. "Our marriage just wasn't important enough to you." "That's not true. Then explain why," she demanded. "I don't know," he said. "I just couldn't let him go. Being away made it easier." "Well, I'm going to make it a lot easier for you," he stated. "I don't know how much he needs you in his life, but I've heard he's going to need a lot of help, so he might need you or someone else. But I don't want you in my life anymore. You can stay with him from now on. My lawyer will be in touch." As he turned to leave, Lisa grabbed his wrist. "Wait, I won't see him again. Please, please, I really need you. Don't you understand? I still love and need you." He replied, "But I don't need you anymore, Lisa." Her heart sank at his words. He added, "I thought we were a team. I made a mistake. Being married should mean that it's just the two of us against the world. If I had known that there was someone else involved, I wouldn't have asked you to marry me. Stop! I wouldn't even date you. What a waste of 4 years. It's not like that. We've had 4 good years together. You have to see that. We can have more time now. I can't believe that after all this, I thought it was just us making choices for our lives. I see now that he was part of it too. Looking back at our trips to Austin, I can't have someone who doesn't fit into our marriage. Maybe you will find another way." He glanced at her hand, then back to her face. He spoke firmly. "Let go of my hand now." She pleaded, "Zach, please stay. We're not done, Lisa." He had never raised his voice at anyone before. "If you don't let go of my hand right now, I swear I will break your fingers so badly that you won't be able to pick up a violin again." She pulled her hand back, shocked and hurt by his words. She never thought he could say something like that to her, especially when he was so angry. Zach turned to leave, and again she begged, "Please stay. Zach, I love you." But as he walked out of the hospital room, she heard him say quietly, "Not enough." Lisa fell into the nearest chair, crying. He hadn't meant to have this fight before the funeral just a few days later, but now everything felt mixed up. He went back to their apartment, grabbing 2 big suitcases and quickly packing what he needed. As he left the apartment, he put his wedding ring on the empty kitchen table for her to see. He thought about staying with his brother or parents, but didn't want to put them through more trouble. He chuckled to himself, thinking, "Who's to say she will miss me at all?" He considered checking into a hotel, but wondered what that would lead to. Then he decided to call Miriam. She told him to come over, so he was heading to Austin for a few days. On the way, he called Sam, who couldn't talk because he was in a meeting. This gave Zach a moment to think. What should he do next? He needed to call his lawyer and get documents ready for delivery the following day. He also wanted to let his family know where he was. Could he really leave? Like, leave Texas for a break? But it was hard to enjoy anything when his heart felt so heavy. Before he left Houston, he knew there was one thing he had to do. When Sam called him back, they talked about him taking some time off, and Sam agreed to help him with that. He sent several texts to say that he and Lisa had talked, and she might need to speak with Robert soon. Gabriella also called and offered him a place to stay. He thanked her for her kind offer, but said no. Surprisingly, Lisa called the very next day after she received her documents. He didn't pick up the phone. Her message said she was sorry and asked him to come back and give her a second chance. But he knew that would not happen. He thought his sister's family did everything they could to help him feel better, and sometimes he almost felt alive instead of empty and worn out inside. The time he spent with them was helpful and helped him figure out what to do next. Luckily, the Houston Fire Inspection Team found out that an old stove caused the explosion. It was connected to an old gas pipe in an old house. The owner should have checked the pipe before starting any repairs. A few days later, he went back to Houston to take care of one last thing before leaving for good. Like before, he saw the same orderly taking a smoke break. After paying $100, they agreed, and Zach went inside. When he saw the orderly leave the room, he walked in. Gerald was awake. Zach stood at the foot of the bed so Gerald could see him. He asked, "Can you hear me, or do I need to write on this board?" He had brought a small whiteboard just in case. Gerald replied, "My ears are still ringing, but I can hear you." Zach then asked, "Do you know who I am?" Gerald said, "I know." Zach turned off his phone and said, "I'm not recording this. It's just between us. I'll take off my shirt if I need to." Gerald replied, "That's not necessary. It's not a big deal." Zach continued, "I won't take much of your time. First of all, why? Why Lisa, even after she got married?" Zach watched as Gerald tried to laugh but winced in pain. Gerald said, "Why? You've got to be kidding. The reason is simple. She's amazing. But if her marriage didn't bother her, it didn't bother me either." Zach had to hold back his anger. Zach asked, "Do you love her?" Gerald said, "No. I care about her, but we don't mean much to each other." Zach pressed on. "Last question, why did you take her music away? She plays so well." Gerald replied, "Of course she plays well. She has real talent, but she cares too much about what others think." He added, "If she's not willing to play no matter what others think, then maybe she shouldn't. Unlike others I've criticized, Lisa fell off her horse and didn't try to get back on. If she lets others influence her so easily, maybe she shouldn't be playing at all." Zach was shocked. "You know how much this means to her, yet you didn't support her." Gerald said, "I'm not supporting anyone. If she wants to stop, that's her choice." Zach felt angry. "So even though she could have been great with you, she was just another person to you?" Gerald smirked. "Oh no. As you know, she was special to me. That's why I wanted to keep seeing her." Zach clenched his fists, feeling furious. "Enjoy your time stuck in that chair, you fool." Zach left the room with a slight grin, having said what he needed to say. He headed to the visitors' lounge and sat down. A few minutes later, a staff member came in and gave him a small voice recorder. Zach checked to make sure the conversation was saved before leaving the hospital. He had dinner with Sam and Gabriella at their home. Their house was simple, especially since they ran a successful business that employed nearly 200 people, mostly in technical jobs. Instead of driving fancy cars like a Mercedes, they chose to drive Toyotas. They asked Zach how he was feeling. He said it felt good not to be in prison and that he didn't need an alibi. But he felt empty inside. Sam pointed out that Zach's brother and sister-in-law must care for him a lot if they risked pretending to be him at immigration. Zach nodded and said, "They love me. I'm lucky to have a family." Then he looked at Gabriella and added, "Including both of you." They all enjoyed their time together, but the mood was sad. Isaac was leaving Houston, and no one knew for how long. Before leaving, he hugged Gabriella and said, "I love you, Mrs. Ortiz. Thank you both for everything." Gabriella replied, "I love you too, Zachary. Don't stay away too long." As he walked out of their house, he met Cassandra. They greeted each other warmly because they sometimes saw each other at work. She noticed her parents hugging, and she could see her mother holding back tears before leaving. Zach received a call from Robert. Mindy had told them everything. Robert apologized for Mindy being involved and for Zach insisting she speak the truth. They knew things would be tough for a while, but they were determined to fix their mistakes and improve their marriage. Zach spent his last night in Houston at his parents' house. That evening, Daniel, Gina, and their 2 kids joined them. Daniel said, "Zach, I know you need to go away for a bit, and I understand, but you have to promise you'll come back. It will be hard for all of us without you." Zach replied, "I promise I'll come back. I just need some time." He hugged them tightly, and they left the next day. For Zach, a new adventure began with a job in Munich, Germany, where a company was working on new converters. He would be more involved in testing and improving the converters as they were made, while also helping with manufacturing. Additionally, he would be the expert in European MRI engines and do some sales work. There was a lot of MRI service work available in Europe, especially in Germany. Zach spent the first week in a hotel while searching for a short-term rental. He found a nice 2-room apartment near the city center, allowing him to blend in with the business people and tourists. It was mid-August, and many tourists were around. After settling in, he took a few days to explore Munich and parts of Bavaria. But after a few weeks in his apartment, he started to wonder if he had made a mistake. He felt really lonely. Sometimes he thought that if he had stayed in Houston or anywhere else, he would still feel lonely. Loneliness brought him pain. He had heard that it would get better with time, but he often wondered how others coped with it. For now, he tried to video call his family in Houston, but it was hard. They always urged him to go outside more, which he did sometimes, but he never felt at ease. Something was missing. The people at the tech center where he worked were nice and invited him to hang out several times. There was even a girl who sometimes joined them, but he couldn't find the bravery to ask her out. Also, he didn't want to be a dull companion because he felt unsure about his language skills. At least his German was improving a little after 2 months in Munich. October started, and he tried to enjoy the local festivals with his co-workers, but he didn't feel happy. Then, his brother called to say that the divorce was final, and their old home was empty. As agreed in the divorce, everything was taken out of the apartment except for a violin that she left behind. Lisa didn't fight the divorce or the terms. She sometimes called Zach, leaving messages saying she was sorry, but he never called her back. After spending 6 weeks in the hospital, Gerald was discharged and moved to Austin to start teaching. Due to his hearing problems, he would never be able to critique performances again. Lisa also moved to Austin to help Gerald recover. Hearing this news, Zach shook his head, feeling lost for months, waiting for the hurt to fade away. He hoped that one day he would feel strong enough to stop isolating himself. Being in the heart of Western Europe made it easy for him to visit various cities on weekends. Instead of going back to Houston for Thanksgiving, he chose Barcelona. He told his family not to come, worrying he might be called back to fix the MRI. He did the same for Christmas. Instead of feeling happy about being with loved ones, he found the idea unpleasant. Christmas in Munich was cold in every way. On Christmas Day, his family, including Sam and Gabriella, called him. Each woman hung up upset and worried. The men were also concerned, but silently. In January, as he neared 5 months in Munich, he got a call from Sam, who typically checked in on the new converter project every 2 weeks. But this time, Sam had a different message. After their usual update, Sam said, "Zach, I want you to begin looking for someone to take your place. It's time for you to go home. While I want you to keep leading the new product project, I have other plans for you here. I'm not sure I'm ready to go home yet. Gabriel has been pushing me to bring you back for months now, and I've put it off as long as I could, but now I really have no choice." Zach laughed. I can imagine she knows how to get what she wants when she sets her mind on something. "Son, you don't even know the half of it. You've only seen a tiny part of what she can do. Honestly, I think I spend most of my time keeping her focused on the charity work. Otherwise, she'd be trying to sort out everyone's problems all the time. Kids or work matters? Sam, you wouldn't want it any other way. You're right, I wouldn't. But she really misses you. Seriously. You helped our team grow here enough to hire someone full-time. I want you to find someone to take your place if you need more time to come back. Just come talk to her and your parents. I'm sure they miss you too. You sound just like my brother. Great minds think alike. Why not set up some in-person interviews in a month? I'll send Frank to help you with that and to make the final choice. If you want, I can talk to Demetrius and see if he can join us for a day." Demetrius is the CEO at the company making the new sensors, where Zach worked when he wasn't fixing memories or working on new sensors. "I'm on it, Sam. I know you are. Take care, Zach." Zach worked with a local hiring agency to test and select a few candidates from across Europe. Then, using Skype, he and Frank did some initial interviews with the top candidates. They planned to bring 4 or 5 of them to Munich for final interviews on Thursday morning, just a week before the scheduled meetings. Zach was in an office of a manufacturing company in Munich when he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Hello, Zachariah." Zach turned, surprised to see a girl standing there. "Cassie, I didn't know you were coming. What brings you here?" Cassie smiled. "Well, the official story is that I've been asked to ask you to take me to Vienna. I have meetings there with our R&D partner early next week, and then I'll be back here midweek." Of course, we both know that's not the whole truth. My meetings are real, but I could easily fly to Vienna and enjoy a nice, if chilly, weekend there myself, even though we have 2 rooms booked. If you can't or don't want to come with me, I can take the train. No problem. But I hear you're a travel expert and know this area well. If you want to spend what they say is a chilly but charming 3-day weekend with someone who values you more than those around here, then we should go together. They say Vienna is one of the most beautiful capitals in Europe. If you don't want to come, I'll totally understand. But I have a feeling my mom won't be happy about me being away. I'll forward all my mom's calls to you." Zach remembered what Sam had said about getting involved in his kids' lives. Zach chuckled. "I bet if I call Frank, he'll say someone is covering for me today and tomorrow." Cassie smiled. "It's 3 in the morning in Houston, so if you want to call your boss, go ahead. But I doubt he'll be happy to hear from you," Zach said. "I'll give you a chance to say no before I agree. Are you sure you want to do this?" "I can talk to your mom," she said. "Did I really just say that?" "I had to say it. I can handle what comes next. I'm not sure you can. But if I really didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be. Do that girl a favor. Okay. I know I'm not the most attractive woman in the world, but it still hurts to be turned down." She made him laugh, and he thought it was kind of funny. She was definitely not her mother. "We need to head to my place so I can pack for the weekend. It will only take a few minutes. I can get you to Vienna in 4 hours if we hurry. Or we can take the scenic route and stop for lunch at a beautiful spot. It's your choice. I'm here for the weekend, so I'm ready to enjoy a nice time. Mom gave us her eggs to use this weekend, and I plan to make it special. Then let's take the scenic route." They took a taxi to his apartment on the way. He asked, "Have you eaten yet? How do you handle jet lag?" "I grabbed a bagel and coffee on the way from the airport, so I'm good. Thanks to your jet lag tips from your department. I went to bed earlier each night last week and took melatonin before my flight, plus a little bottle of tequila. I also took 2 packets of instant coffee to help wake me up on the plane, so all was well. Though I'm a bit tired. Maybe I'll fall asleep in the car. Oh, I doubt that. The snow in the mountains must be beautiful. I'm sure you've seen mountains before, but after Flat Houston, this drive through the mountains will be interesting. It was for me, at least." He rented a car paid for by his company and made a reservation for a late lunch at a restaurant she liked. His apartment wasn't fancy, but it was clear he kept it tidy even when he wasn't expecting anyone. At that point, only small cars or Mercedes E-Class were available at the rental place. They smiled at each other, used Gabriella's Amex card, and chose a Mercedes. As Zach said, rather than going straight there, they headed toward Salzburg, but skipped it and went to Hallstatt, one of Austria's prettiest lakeside towns. Above the town is the Rudolph's Dome restaurant, offering stunning views of the snowy town and lake from its terrace. Zach's German was getting better, but he was surprised when Casey spoke excellent German to the waitress, which really helped their service. They had a few visitors who spoke English among other languages. "I had no idea you could speak German. There are probably many things about me you don't know. The two countries leading in the research for the technology we want to use are the United States and Germany. I studied in Germany for 1 semester and had to improve my German." Zach thought that was amazing and started to realize how special she was. Sitting next to Casey and looking out at the lake was easy. He always noticed she dressed nicely. Her makeup was always nice, too. Today she wore a heavy skirt, warm tights, and what looked like riding boots. Her dark cashmere sweater looked great on her. She resembled her mother but was slimmer. She had a small chest and wide hips and was in good shape. Unlike her mom, she wore her dark hair in loose curls instead of pinned up. Unlike Lisa, who had a sharp, beautiful face, her round face seemed sweet and innocent, much like her mother's. She said she wasn't a striking beauty, but he was married to someone who was. And look where that led him. From a spot near the restaurant, they took a selfie with the city, the lake, and snowy mountains in back and sent it to her mom before leaving the city. They chose a pretty mountainous road to travel to Vienna. He asked, "What will you do in Vienna?" She replied, "As I said, I will meet with our research and development partners. We are redesigning the sensor to be more sensitive than the current model you and our manufacturing team are working on. You always need to improve the next model. Are you helping with the design?" "Yes, but don't tell anyone." "One reason I studied in Germany was to connect with people who can help our company here. Very few in the company know about this. Why keep it a secret? I thought you'd want to share it. If everything goes well, then many will know. Right now, many believe the company will be passed down to me and my brother. We're trying to stay under the radar until we build a good reputation. My younger brother Tom, who you've known for a while, is working on software to improve the images from each new sensor we test." "Wow, it sounds like a family business," she smiled, knowing more about him than he realized. "Yes, it is a family business. My dad wants it to stay that way." Zach chuckled and said, "I might work for you one day." She laughed too, seeing it might turn out to be the other way around. "You see it that way, but Dad doesn't. He believes you're not working for him now. He likes to think you and a few others are working with him. Everyone else works for you." "Wow. Don't be too surprised to see me on the R&D team. I went to medical school for nearly 10 years. While I was studying, I started working on some designs myself. I don't think of myself as a genius, but I've learned a lot. After 12 years of school, including medical school, I finally earned my PhD. I guess my parents or my scholarships helped me pay more than $500,000 in tuition. Now it was time to put what I learned into action." She clearly wasn't just in the company for appearances. They talked about the company, the industry, her background, and education. They even spent a lot of time discussing her mother, which was nice. Cassie admired her mom and loved her for who she was, but she was not her mother. She tried to take on some of her mother's ways and elegance, but her mom was much more quiet. Cassie was straightforward and could be blunt like Sam. While her mother might use softer terms, Cassie would say what she meant directly. So far, they hadn't talked about relationships or love. As they left the mountains and reached Vienna, she said, "You know she misses you and is really worried about you." Zach chuckled. "Sadly, I have several people who miss and worry about me. My sister, my sister-in-law, my mom, and your mom. I assume you're talking about your mom?" "Yes, that's right. I wish she wouldn't worry, but I'm getting better. She would have come instead of me, but Mrs. K thought it wouldn't look right. She is a married woman." They both laughed. "This really feels like her again. She's made you take the fall, or maybe be your guide through the confusion." He watched her as she gazed out the window, or maybe she was just turning away from him. "Thank you, Cassie. The rest of the weekend could be a mess, but I've enjoyed today more than I have in months." This was true, but the conversation got too serious, so he said, "See? That alone should show her I'm getting better." Even though he knew today was just a nice break, he saw her smile in the reflection of the car window. They stayed at the Park Hyatt Vienna, where they each had a nice suite for the long weekend. After settling in, They met at the concierge desk to find a great restaurant, bought 2 tickets to skip the line for the big Ferris wheel, and booked a horse-drawn carriage ride for the evening. The evening was cold but beautiful, and from the top of the Ferris wheel, they sent Gabriella a photo of the two of them with wintry Vienna behind them. Gabriella was thrilled to get the photo and had to resist calling them. She was happier than she could have imagined, but knew it was best not to get involved. Now. After spending the last few months planning with Sam, she decided to take a step back and see how everything would turn out. She hoped Zach wouldn't get any unexpected calls for MRI repairs. To keep her mind off things, she thought about doing some charity work, which she managed to fit in. Zach and Cassie enjoyed a late-night carriage ride, cuddling under a cozy blanket with 2 big thermoses of hot chocolate. They used this time to talk about the places they wanted to explore during the winter weekend. At the end of the night, outside her hotel room, Zach received a hug, a friendly kiss on the cheek, and a thank you for his help that Saturday morning. After having a delicious breakfast together in the lovely hotel restaurant, they spoke with the concierge about their weekend plans. She wanted to see some beautiful churches, along with several palaces and markets. Zach mentioned that if she liked cathedrals, there was one in Barcelona he would love to show her. She smiled and replied, "Maybe one day I'll take you up on that promise." There were no issues with the MRI, and they enjoyed their time in Vienna. As expected, it was quite cold during the day, but the sky was very clear. They visited many amazing and interesting spots, including St. Stephen's Cathedral, the Kunsthistorisches Museum, the Schönbrunn Palace, Belvedere Palace, Naschmarkt, and Café Central, among others. Each evening, Zach received a hug and a kiss on the cheek for his kindness. On Sunday afternoon, as it was time for him to return to Munich, he gave her a snow globe to remember their trip. "I want to thank you, Zach. You didn't have to come, but I'm really glad you did. I had a wonderful time here," she said. "Me too," he replied. "I was unsure at first, and that was my fault, but this weekend was great. Thanks for inviting me." He hesitated, wanting to ask something, but held back for a moment before finally speaking up. "When's your next train back to Munich?" "My train arrives on Wednesday afternoon. Why do you ask?" She noticed Zach was deep in thought. "Would you be free on Friday to help with some interviews, Zach?" she asked. "I don't know much about that, and you know I'm not like my mother. I'm not sure how I can help." "I know you're not your mother," he replied, trying to find a way to persuade her. He smiled as he said, "You mentioned it was a family business, right? I think it would be important to hear your thoughts about the candidates." "I'll see what I can do," she answered, hoping it would be a yes by the time she was back in Munich. Zach often thought about Casey. He pictured her business lunches and dinners with a research company in Vienna and felt a bit envious. He wasn't sure why. Still, the weekend had been exactly what he needed. On Wednesday afternoon, Zach met her at the train station, and Cassie was pleasantly surprised to see him. That evening, they had a work dinner with Demetrius and some others. After dinner, Zach walked Cassie back to her hotel. She asked him, "Do you remember the church in Barcelona you told me about?" He replied, "Yes, I do. Do you have any plans for this weekend?" She said, "No, not at all. I know this is last minute, but can I persuade you to be my guide for a short visit to Barcelona this weekend?" Zach loved their last trip together, so he said, "I think it won't be hard for you to convince me about almost anything." She smiled at his response. "Great. I'll book the tickets and a hotel. Good night, Zach." She hugged him and kissed him on the cheek, holding on a bit longer this time. "Good night, Cassie." He found himself enjoying these moments. The interviews on Friday morning went smoothly. They invited 4 final candidates and interviewed Cassie and Zach together. They then talked and decided to offer the job to a man named Dominic, who was about Zach's age. After sending the other candidates away, they took Dominic out to lunch. Everyone chatted, mixing German and English. Then Frank's phone rang, and Zach's hopes for a weekend with Cassie seemed to crumble. Frank said, "Okay, where is it? Give me the details. Yes, I'll pass them to Zach. He's right next to me." Zach asked if there was an emergency. Frank replied, "Yes, there's a situation in Belfast." Zach looked at Cassie with a sad smile, and she shrugged. He told her it was family business. She nodded. He then turned to Dominic and suggested, "I know you haven't had time to think about the offer, but how about you take this call with us? You can see how we work and then decide." Dominic agreed, and they got ready to head to the airport. Zach and Cassie had only a few moments before he had to leave. He said, "I'm sorry. I really wanted to go to Barcelona with you." She replied, "It's all right. We'll have other chances later." He nodded, feeling like fate was trying to tell him something. The work call went well, and Dominic, who lived in Frankfurt, decided to join the company in Belfast. Zach thought more about starting a relationship with Cassie. He liked the idea but felt troubled because he needed to tell her about what he had done concerning Gerald. He believed he had done the right thing, and that Gerald, who had behaved poorly, got what he deserved. Now he knew he had to share this with Cassie. He didn't need to do it right away, but he didn't want to hide anything from her. He cared too much about her, especially as part of the Ortiz family, to keep secrets. Though the past weekend had distracted him, he felt sad again. He started getting ready to pack up his apartment and move back to Houston. A week had gone by since Cassie returned when his phone rang. "Hello. Zach, it's Cassie. How are things in Houston?" "Cool and humid, which is better than the usual hot and humid weather." "I haven't heard from you. I just want to check that you're okay." He decided that explaining why he tried to hurt a man was not something to do over the phone, so he would wait until later when he got back to Houston. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I wanted to call, but I've been feeling down lately. I'll tell you more the next time we meet." "Okay, so when do you plan to come back?" "I haven't set a date yet, but I should be home in less than a month. Will I see you when you're back?" She sounded anxious. He felt the same way. They talked for about 30 minutes before they both had to hang up. Their little chats continued every few days. Although Zach found it harder to join in, it all felt pointless to him. His feelings held him back from ever thinking about marriage. At that moment, he genuinely believed that what he did to Gerald was right. He still believed that. But why was he so worried that Cassie or any other good woman wouldn't understand? His thoughts felt like a dog chasing its tail, going in circles and getting nowhere. Even though he was troubled about his feelings for Cassie, he was happy to be back in Houston and see his family, including the Ortiz family, on Friday when he returned. Everyone he cared about was waiting for him at the airport, including his sister and her family and Gabriella, but not Cassie. There were big hugs for everyone, and they all had dinner at Zach and Daniel's parents' house. Gabriella enjoyed watching Zach play with his little nieces and nephews. At the end of the night, he walked Gabriella to her car. They were outside when he asked, "How's Cassie?" She replied, "I think she's confused and maybe a bit frustrated. She's unsure about what you're feeling right now. Do you know what you're feeling?" He said, "No, not really. I keep thinking about that meeting we had after Lisa let me down and what happened after that." "You mean what we did?" "You had help," Gabriella reminded him. "You're right, I did. But I won't hide anything from someone I might have a serious relationship with. I can really see myself being serious about Cassie. But how can I talk to her or anyone about this? Can you picture me saying, 'Hey, I wanted to hurt a man'? It turns out I didn't do it, but I messed him up for life. He was an idiot, so he deserved it. Do you still want to date or marry me? See what I mean?" Gabriella believed they had made the right choice, but she understood his worries. "I think there are reasons that explain your actions, but you need to have this talk with her. Eventually, I think she'll come around," Zach replied. "She might or she might not. That's true, but you won't know until you try. I hope you do try. I have a feeling this talk will be harder than the last one I had with Lisa, but I shouldn't think that way. Cassandra is a very mature young woman, but she can't guess what I'm thinking. I need to show what I really mean through my actions." He sighed. "Right now, I'm not sure what my feelings are." She gently touched his face. "I get that, but if you choose not to act, others will see that as a choice too. Thank you, Mrs. Ortiz. I appreciate you coming. Please tell Sam I'll see him on Monday. I will. And what about Cassie? I'll give her a call. All right. Take care, young man." As he watched her leave, he didn't feel very young at all. He tried to call Cassie the next day, but she didn't pick up. He tried again the day after, but still no answer. At work on Monday, he waited until lunchtime to check on her. Her door was open, and she was at her desk when he knocked on the door frame. He noticed a snow globe on her desk, which made him smile. He said, "Hello?" She replied coldly, "Hello? What do you need, Zach?" It was clear she was still upset. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I haven't been okay since you left, and it's my responsibility, not yours, she said. I really enjoyed our time together and was excited about our trip to Barcelona. I thought you were too, but then everything changed. Can you tell me why? He asked. I can explain, but not right now, she replied. Until then, I don't think we have anything to discuss. I have work to finish. It hurt her to say that, but she didn't want to start a relationship with someone who didn't understand his feelings for her. It could lead to disappointment. Zach stood up to leave. I really enjoyed our time together, he said. She then asked, could you please close the door when you go? He did as she asked. She didn't want anyone to see her tears. For the next few months, Zach and Cassie barely spoke. He couldn't bring up what happened with Gerald because he feared Cassie would push him away. On the other hand, as long as he avoided talking about it, she would continue to keep her distance. Gabriella watched Zach with growing sadness. It hurt her to see two people she cared about build a wall between them before they even had a chance to connect. There were whispers in the office that Cassie was seeing an older doctor. Her brother had introduced her to Zach, and he began to worry about how much longer he could stay at work. 1 year? 2? He felt sad at the thought of leaving the company where he had spent 12 years of his career, starting from college. Did he want to keep putting his energy into a job where he felt less secure because Cassie and Tom were likely to get more responsibilities over time? He never thought they would be upset with him, but lately his time with Cassie had been short and tense. On a Wednesday afternoon in early May, Gabriella walked into Zach's office. Zach, can you come to Sam's office at 5 o'clock this evening for a few minutes? We want to talk to you. Of course, Mrs. C. Ortiz, I will be there. Now he wondered if they were going to let him go. At 5 p.m., he entered Sam's office and saw Cassie walking out. She looked really nice, maybe too nice for work. She must have had a date or an event. That thought made him feel sad. Hey, Zach, she said as she passed him at the door. Hi, Cassie. He thought about how things had changed so quickly. He didn't think he could stick around long enough to finish the year. He needed to think about updating his resume. Close the door, Zach, Sam said. He did so and sat down. It had been almost 4 years since he started. They sat around the coffee table. Gabriella looked less strong and more sad than usual. Zach, as your boss, I can't ask you to do what I'm about to suggest, but as your friend, I hope you will, Sam began. You know Gabby is on the board of a local charity that helps homeless women. They get a place to stay, food and clothing while they learn skills or get an education. The first group of women in this new program is graduating this Saturday. The charity is having a small event to celebrate them. All the senior managers and their spouses are invited, and Gabby has invited our children too. We see you as part of this group and want you to come as well. It won't be a formal event, but it would be nice if you could wear a suit or a sports jacket and tie. Gabriella smiled and added, Please wear your best suit. Sam rolled his eyes. A few months ago, I thought Cassie would accompany you. I was disappointed when that didn't work out. Most single people will probably bring guests, but I've already made sure Cassie won't bring anyone. I hope you won't either. But based on our past talks, I have a feeling you won't. What we ask is that you talk to Cassie after the event on Saturday night. I know this will be hard for you, but please do this for me. I'm afraid we'll lose you if you don't, Sam said. Zach tried to speak, but Gabriella pressed on. No, Zachariah, I see it's true. You don't look at me the same way you did before you went to Germany. I used to see love and admiration in your eyes. Now I only see sadness. This is really hard for me. Can you honestly say you haven't thought about leaving the company? There was a long pause before he replied. No, I haven't started looking yet, but I have thought about it. Gabriella took out a tissue and wiped her eyes. I suspected that, she sighed heavily. Remember when we sat here a bit over 4 years ago and you showed us that lovely ring you bought for Lisa? He nodded. What did I say? He asked. It wasn't what I thought you'd say, he replied. It wasn't that I wasn't happy you found love. I really was. My reaction was because I hoped you'd take a little more time to fall in love with Cassandra. She's really special, and you are special too. I know you two would make a great couple. At that moment, I felt like time was slipping away. Now I worry again that time is running out. I don't think she's serious about that doctor, but I'm afraid the distance between you two keeps growing. So we ask you as a friend, as part of our family. Please, talk to her. What if she doesn't want to talk to me? He asked. What if she turns me away because of my mistake? Then you will try your best. But if it doesn't work, at least you can look back and know you did the right thing. Can you say you've done the right thing these last 3 months? Can you look me in the eye and tell me you've done everything right during this time?" He felt ashamed as he whispered. "Now," Sam said, "Zach, we still think what you did to Gerald was okay. I think you felt a lot of anger then, and that made it easier. Even now, almost 9 months later, I'm sure we could sit down and look at the files on the damage left behind and feel the same way. We don't know how your talk with Cassie will go, and I bet you feel unsure about it. But think about this option compared to the other. If you can take this step, then I know you can handle it. I don't want to see you do all of this for someone else, Zach. But if you do, I will understand." Zach said, "You might think I'm silly for asking this, but I must. You know your daughter well. If I tell her everything, and I mean everything, what if her reaction is bad? What if she thinks I did something wrong? Do you think she would tell the police? I'd prefer she doesn't have to go through that." Gabriella was about to speak, but Sam squeezed her hand, stopping her. "I can't say for sure, Zach, but I hope we raised her to see that you did what you thought was right, which we all believe was right too. Even if she doesn't agree, she should respect it enough not to tell on you. I believe that if she tells the police everything, they will struggle to prove anything given your strong alibi." They wanted to say everything they had. Now it was Zach's turn. He stood up to leave and said, "I'll do my best. I promise you that. I have no idea how this will turn out." Sam stood up and shook Zach's hand. "I know what you will do. I believe in you. I have believed in you for a long time." Gabriella stood up and hugged him tightly. "I love you, Zachariah. I will always love you," she said. He replied, "I love you too." He felt really sad at that moment. It was like he thought he might lose part of his family, and maybe he would. He spent all of Friday evening talking with Daniel and Gina. Even though he tried to tell them that she was different from her mother and might not accept what he had done, they kept saying he needed to do this to move on. He had suffered for 6 months in Germany, then had a week of hope, followed by another 3 months of pain. He felt he could not keep going like this. He agreed with them on that. Zach was very nervous on Saturday. He got to the event a few minutes early. It was at a hotel next to the shelter where the women lived. The grand ballroom was split into smaller areas with about 10 tables and chairs set up. When he got there, Sam was already waiting for him. "Hey, Zach. Glad you came," Sam said. "Me too. Is everyone here?" Zach asked. "Not yet. So far, we have a little more than half of the guests. But soon we expect a full room. We've assigned seats so the graduates are spread out. Otherwise, we worried they would all gather at one table. Let me show you your seat." Sam walked Zach into the ballroom to a table near the stage. The only person he recognized at the table was Casey. Zach's seat was one away from Casey, and there was a tall chair next to him, which he found strange. "Hi, Casey," he said. She was wearing a lovely dark blue dress. "Hi, Zach." This time her greeting was nicer than before. He didn't know anyone else at the table. A few minutes later, Gabriella came over with a young woman who looked to be in her early 20s, along with her little girl, who seemed to be about 3 or 4 years old. The woman wore a lovely black dress, and the little girl had on a bright, colorful dress. Gabriella said, "Hello, everyone. I want to introduce you to the star of our table for tonight. This is Melody. She just graduated with an associate degree in accounting, and this sweet little girl is her daughter, Bella. Isn't that a lovely name? Zachariah, I trust you to look after them." Bella was the only child at the event, and he was a bit surprised by this responsibility, but he tried to do his best. Her mother sat next to Casey, and Bella sat next to him. He introduced himself to both of them, as everyone else at the table did too. Bella was not shy. She talked to Zach about her mom, where they lived, the new orphanage being built nearby, her mom's new job, their new dresses, and their new used car. Zach found her very endearing. She was a funny little girl and made almost everyone at the table laugh. Cassie joked, "You should be a salesperson." Melody added, "I know, right?" I used to try to stop her, but I learned it was better to let her wear herself out. The others at the table laughed. For dinner, everyone could pick chicken parmesan, spinach and cheese manicotti, or filet mignon. Soon, the food and drinks came, and Bella was excited to eat. She was munching on her breadstick when her manicotti arrived, which she really liked, until she spotted Zach's steak. She pulled on her mom's sleeve and said, "Mom, can I have a piece of steak?" Her mom had chosen chicken, and Cassie had picked manicotti. Before Melanie could answer, Zach said, "If it's okay with you, I can share some of mine." "I don't mind. Please, Mom, please." Melanie looked at Zach and said, "Sorry, Melanie, just a couple of bites, Bella. He needs his—" "Fine." Then she turned to her new friend and added, "Thank you, Mr. Zach." She was so charming. Zach happily cut a nice piece of steak and began slicing it into small, easy-to-eat pieces, just like he had seen his sister do for her kids many times. Bella was really good with her fork and had nice manners for her age. While her mother might have stood out that evening, Bella was definitely the star of the table. After dinner and before dessert, Gabriella took the podium and invited the new graduates to join her. She gave a brief speech celebrating the 8 women who were graduating that night. Each woman had either been homeless or hurt less than 3 years ago. All the women near the podium received applause for their hard work. Almost all of them had already found jobs. They came from different backgrounds, and aside from Melody, most looked to be in their 30s, though a few appeared older. One of them looked to be about Gabriella's age. After the ceremony, dessert carts rolled out, and Bella's eyes got big with excitement. Melody let Bella choose her own dessert. When the coffee arrived, Bella asked, "Can I have a drink?" When the waiter shared the drink options for kids, Zach asked, "Can your chef make hot chocolate?" This caught Bella's attention. Her hopeful eyes turned to her mother, making everyone except Melody chuckle. Melody sighed and said, "1 hot chocolate, please." Zach added, "Make it 2, please. I have a small request." He leaned into the waiter and whispered a few instructions. The waiter nodded and went back to the kitchen. Zach told Bella to be patient, saying it takes time to do things right. "Does your mom ever braid your hair?" he asked. She nodded. "It takes time to make it look nice, right?" More nods. "It's the same with hot chocolate. It takes a few minutes, but it should be worth it." Meanwhile, Bella enjoyed her warm chocolate and peanut brownie topped with whipped cream while waiting for her hot chocolate. Soft dance music began to play, and Sam asked Gabriella to dance. Before long, other senior managers were dancing with their partners, too. Zach wondered if this was really required. He leaned over to his new friend Bella and asked her. Bella asked her mom if they could dance. Melody looked at Zach with surprise, but then let him take Bella to the dance floor. He asked Bella to place her feet on his legs, and he held her hands as they moved around the room. They had a big crowd watching, including a smiling Gabriella and Sam, along with others at his table. A few minutes later, Zach whispered to Bella, and she nodded. He picked Bella up and took her back to the table. He told Melody, "She wants you to dance with us." Melody smiled at Zach, who was suddenly so interested in her daughter. Zach remembered seeing his brother-in-law dance with his sister and their daughter once. He hoped to dance well with Bella next to him while holding Melody's hand. He rested one hand on Melody's waist and had her other hand on his shoulder. They weren't great dancers, but Bella seemed to be having fun. Zach spent most of the time chatting with sweet Bella. Melody watched Zach for most of the dance. They talked and learned that Melody would work in the accounting department starting at noon. She was excited and nervous. Zach said, "Did you know Gabriella used to work in accounting?" Melody replied, "Oh, I know. She and Mr. Ortiz had an interview together." This made Zach smile. "Yes, they are 2 of the nicest people I've met. I think you will enjoy working there," he added. He considered how long he would be working there himself. He also learned that Melody was looking for a daycare for Bella that would be near her new job. Zach was sure that Minnie's Montessori school could help out. He thought he might even connect with a company or charity to support the school. The school offered scholarships for families who needed help with payments. After a few minutes of dancing, they heard a voice. "Can I step in?" It was Cassie. Zach said to Bella, "I see our hot chocolate on the table." Bella happily let her mother return to the table. After a moment of quiet dancing, Cassie asked, "Are you trying to make me jealous?" "What? No, I wouldn't do that. I just wanted to be nice to Bella so her mom could take a break," Zach replied. "I know, I'm joking. You were really kind. I think you made quite an impression," she said. After a short pause, Zach said, "I don't get it. For the last 2 months, you haven't shown any signs of being jealous." Cassie took a moment to respond. "Well, I am jealous. I love seeing this side of you." Zach was puzzled, but listened. I meant what I said, Zach. That weekend meant a lot to me. I was really looking forward to the next time. When you shut me out, I felt sad. You can ask my parents if you want. It took Zach a moment to reply. I know, and I realized it while I was doing that. I'm really sorry. I didn't like myself for a long time, but I have a reason I want to share with you later. If you'll let me, I'll tell you the whole truth. Then you might have a reason not to speak to me. I'm an adult, Arya. I can handle this. She squeezed the hand she was holding and led him back to the table where Bella sat, with chocolate around her mouth and whipped cream on her nose. Gabriella watched them with a smile, happy that her plan seemed to be working. Sam thought it was a good idea to seat Bella and Melody next to Zach. Are you proud of yourself, Gabby? Oh, be quiet. We haven't won yet, but things are looking better for us. Sam gave his clever wife a loving kiss, knowing she didn't like showing affection in public. But she felt so happy that she didn't mind. Zach acted like he was drinking sweet hot chocolate, making a fake mustache, which made Bella laugh. As the night came to a close, Bella started to fall asleep, which was Melody's cue that it was time to go. Thank you, Zach, for entertaining Bella tonight. She really enjoyed it. It was my pleasure. Melody, bring her to the office sometimes. I'd love to see her. Important people like Cassie and her parents would, too. Can I help you carry her to the car? Melody had noticed Cassie's jealousy when she joined the dance, and she did not want to upset the CEO's daughter. She politely refused. A few minutes later, Zach came over and whispered to Cassie, Are you here with your parents? She nodded. Can I take you somewhere so we can talk? She nodded again. Zach talked to Melody and said, Cassie said I could drive her since she came with you. I just wanted to let you know. Sam was quiet, but Gabriella, with her good manners, looked happy and nodded in agreement. After Zach walked away, Gabriella was smiling brightly. Sam said, You've done well. Barely able to contain his joy. Gabriella replied coolly, I know. He asked, You know that if things go as you planned, he will probably stay at her place tonight? I trust our daughter to make the right choice. If being with him tonight is the right choice, then I'm okay with that. He laughed. You surprise me sometimes. She kissed him on the cheek and said, I have to keep you on your toes. Zach said, Right now I'm at my parents' house, so we can go to the restaurant, your place, or my car. It's up to you. I think I prefer my place. They drove west from downtown, going past Rice University and the Galleria, toward where most of the office workers lived. The conversation was easygoing, mostly talking about how great the event was and how wonderful it was to help these women and those getting ready to graduate next year. When he got to her house, he saw it was a nice little townhouse that looked fairly new. After he stepped out of the car, he grabbed the detective folder from the back seat as they walked inside. She asked, Would you like something to drink? No, thanks, I need all my focus for this, but I might change my mind later. She poured herself a glass of wine, and they sat down in her living room. With a wave of her hand, she said, All right, go ahead, it's your turn. He asked, What do you know about my divorce from Lisa? This isn't an interrogation, it's your story, she replied. He let out a deep sigh. Okay, this might take some time. He shared everything, from the night they first met to when they fell in love. He talked about her odd behavior when he returned home and how she didn't want to play the violin. He also explained how Mindy's pregnancy made Lisa think about starting a family. Next, he told her about the call from his brother and the picture he saw in the newspaper. I brought the reporter along so you can see what he's like. I can point to 2 lives he ruined and many others he hurt. He leaves pain behind wherever he goes. I don't get why he was so admired before. Poison felt like a strange word to him, but he kept going. So this is what happened. Like I said, this man is toxic. He has harmed many people and pushed one woman to her limits, not to mention what he did to Lisa. He took away her love for music and helped to ruin my marriage. I wanted him to face consequences for his actions, even if he wouldn't be caught or punished, and even if some people praised him. You can call it revenge, fairness, or whatever you want. With some help from a few others, we made a plan to get back at him without getting myself in trouble. It didn't all go as we hoped. Please don't tell anyone about my friends in this. Your parents supposedly sent me away on a trip. Instead of me, my brother went on that trip. I was supposed to do the job. Passing through immigration gave me an excuse. On that day, he was said to be working from home. I even stopped by his office early to grab some files, so security cameras would see him there. I caused a gas explosion at Gerald's house. I meant to harm him, but he must be very strong because he survived. He was badly hurt but alive, so even though I'm not a true murderer, I tried to end his life. My biggest punishment is that Lisa went to Austin to help him heal. Why? I don't know, but I have something she doesn't know. I have a recording of him saying things that would likely make her leave him, but I'm hurting her by allowing her to stay with him. After that, I just wanted to go because I couldn't handle the pity when I was so unhappy. Your father let me go to Germany, where I felt very unhappy until the day you arrived. But then, when you left, I felt sad again, but for another reason. I wanted to go to Barcelona too. While I was in Belfast, I understood that I needed to talk to you. If you were just a casual date or someone I couldn't really connect with, it wouldn't matter. But after our time in Vienna, I realized I could have a serious relationship with you. I didn't want to waste your time if you might reject me because of my past. I couldn't build something real while hiding such a big secret. He finished speaking. She took a long drink of wine and then asked, "Is that everything? Is there more you need to tell me? I just told you I tried to harm someone. How could anything else be more important? What about school? You and the star athlete?" She looked at him closely. "Who told you this?" "For someone who knows my family so well, I'm surprised you haven't figured it out." He sighed and shook his head. "You clearly have an advantage, and I'm tired. Can you please fill me in here?" "You know my mom cares about you, right?" "She really does. I've heard her talk about you for a long time. She wanted us to be a couple even before you met Lisa. There were moments when I found you interesting and moments when I wanted to hear nothing about you. Syria. That's all I heard. Then you got engaged to Lisa, and my mom was heartbroken. Heartbroken, I went from her talking about you all the time to complete silence. After I started working at the company, I saw my parents more often, and you both just before you went to Germany. I could see that something was bothering her. Do you remember that night I saw you after dinner with my parents? That's when I found out about your divorce. My mom cried for you when she learned about Lisa's betrayal because she was hurt too. She missed you a lot while you were gone and kept asking Dad to bring you back. When I had to go to Vienna and Munich for work, she wanted me to check on you. I didn't mind. I'd heard nothing but good things about you for years, so I knew you were a good person. Almost everyone at the company thinks highly of you too. Some say you're trying too hard to impress my mom, but those who matter don't believe that because you're not trying to win over my dad. We didn't talk much after I joined the company, but you were always polite and nice. So I was curious about who I would see when I came to Germany. Mom and Dad talked to me to prepare me since I had only heard good things for years, and they were genuinely worried about you. They told me everything they knew, and I have to admit I was a bit surprised. Believe it or not, I was surprised. Not so much by them, but by you. My parents really value family, and their belief is to always try to do the right thing. Maybe that's why you and she get along so well. After our first day together, I had to stop myself from pulling you into my room and wanting to spend the whole night with you. That would have made the day even better. But if I did that, we wouldn't have seen much of Vienna. Those few days in Vienna were amazing, and I was already falling for you. I promise. If we had gone to Barcelona, we wouldn't have seen the cathedral because I only booked one room and didn't plan to leave it much. I hope this helps you understand what I was thinking. He shook his head. I can't believe you knew this whole time and still had feelings for me, she said. I knew, but it was your secret. Like you said, we couldn't start a relationship with such a big secret. But it was up to you to tell me. I was upset because I wanted more. But if you couldn't find the courage to have this talk, then we could never be together. He replied, I'm sorry I hurt you, but I didn't know how to handle it. Always trust me, and I will trust you. That's how we'll begin. He thought that sounded great. I like that idea. So what do we do now? Well, don't make me jealous anymore by doing those sweet things with someone's daughter, she said. I didn't know I could make you jealous at that moment. No more appointments with doctors or anyone else for you, she said. She walked over and sat next to him. I promise it wasn't a real date, but it helped me get back to you and pushed you to act. Also, if we are going to be something, be careful about how much my mom has you doing what she wants. He laughed. It may be tough, but if it helps, I spent a lot of time wishing you could have been with me while you were in Europe. Is that true? She asked, leaning over to kiss him. It was a sweet kiss on the lips. "Is that true?" he asked. Then he kissed her back, and the feelings they had in Europe came rushing back. It was a good thing no one could see inside her house. Although they both cared for each other, there wasn't much love at the moment. After lunch, her phone rang. When she looked at the caller ID, she saw it was Gabriella. She laughed and said, "My mom is checking on me. It's almost surprising she didn't call you." She answered the phone. "Hi, Mom, how are you?" "Everything is good, thank you. Have you and Zachariah managed to talk through everything?" "Yes, I think we decided to give it a try." She winked at Zach. "Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Can you two join us for dinner tomorrow night? I think I can find a way to get him to come, but I need to call Zachariah first." Here, too disappointed though, through the phone, Cassie called out, "Hey, Zachariah, can we have dinner with my parents tomorrow?" Gabriella asked. After a moment, she added, "You seem very sure of yourself, don't you, Cassandra?" "Yes, I'm really glad. Make sure to give my regards to your new partner. I'll visit as much as he can." Gabriella was definitely not like her mother. Zach felt this would be enjoyable. About a month later, one early morning, Zach was at a rehab center in Austin, waiting for a brief visit. He found out that Gerald was in therapy. He grabbed a big bag from the car trunk and walked into the waiting area where Lisa was sitting. She looked much older than he remembered. She had lost some weight, and her brown hair was not as neat as when they were together. She seemed very tired, as if life had drained her energy. "Good morning, Lisa," he said. "Zach, what are you doing here? Wait a moment. If you're here to brag, don't worry. I know how I ended up here." "No, Lisa, I didn't come to brag. I came to say sorry and to forgive you." "I don't think I deserve your forgiveness, but for what?" she asked. "Not long after we last met in the hospital, I found out something I should have told you sooner, but I chose not to. A good friend encouraged me to make things right and to forgive you. I hope what I'm about to say will help you." "Do you want to help me?" she replied. "Yes. I need you to listen to this recording. You'll understand after." He played the recording of his talk with Gerald. It didn't take long. Her reaction was not what he expected. She wasn't mad at Gerald for what he said or at him for not sharing it earlier. She just looked sad. "Why tell me this now? You could have let me spend my life taking care of him," she said, "because I met someone I really respect. They reminded me that it's always important to do the right thing, even when no one is watching." "I know that. I don't care that I hurt Gerald. He deserved it. But since I care about you, I shouldn't let him keep hurting you," Zach said. "I always thought you caused the gas explosion, but I wasn't going to try to prove it." This made it clear to Zach that Lisa's help for Gerald came more from obligation than from love. He reconsidered his next words and decided to focus on what he had done. "I had planned to wait 3 years before telling you this, which is how long we've been married. I believe you've already paid a very high price for being with him. You've suffered enough. Do you remember the young girl who took her own life after his harsh review of her performance? What if he had done something similar to you after your divorce? He doesn't care about anyone. He just uses people to feel better about himself. He uses you because you are beautiful, and people notice you with him. Don't let him take advantage of you anymore. He doesn't deserve you. You've allowed him to keep hurting you, and he doesn't care about you or your music. All he cares about is himself. But we, my family and yours, care about you. We want you to stop being with him because he is causing you pain. It would be awful if he made you into someone like him." Lisa thought about how much time she had spent on this sad man. How had she let herself be fooled for so long? His sarcasm was not wisdom. It was just his way of feeling better than others. Some newspapers in Texas gave him attention because of his family background and his job as a teacher. They thought his clever remarks were interesting. Remembering the young girl who took her own life, Lisa realized she was not the only one hurt by him. He liked to put others down, just like he did to her. Lisa let it happen and sometimes even supported it. She decided she wouldn't allow this anymore. She looked at Zach, the one she loved deeply. A tear dropped down her cheek as she asked, "What's in the bag?" "This is from my whole family to you. I don't know why you left it, but I hope you love it again and think good thoughts about us when you use it." He pulled out her violin case. She couldn't hold back her feelings anymore. Her parents had spent a lot of money for that violin when it won first prize in the Houston Youth Orchestra. They had been so proud. She had left it because she knew she could never play it with Gerald around. She burst into tears and hugged Zach, crying for all the lost years and music. He didn't push her away. He hugged her tight until she calmed down, hoping she could get her life back without that man. After a few minutes, when she was calmer, she said, "I have to go. I don't know where, but I'm leaving him. I'm sorry that I hurt you before and let him stay in my life when you cared about me. I will always regret hurting you. Thank you for being here, Zach." "I will always love you," she added. She took the case, walked out the door, and drove away. Zach loved her too. A week later, he returned to Houston, and Miriam visited Lisa. She learned that Lisa had left Gerald. In fact, Lisa never saw him again, and he never left his wheelchair. Miriam wanted Lisa to teach her children how to play the violin. At first, Lisa said no, but then Miriam, her husband, and the kids convinced her. She remembered how Zach's family had praised her playing at the start of their relationship, and how happy her music could make others. She wished she had listened to them sooner. Her renewed love for music and teaching brought great joy back to Lisa's life. Seeing the smiles on the faces of the children and Miriam made her smile too. She became friends with Miriam and her family, who helped her right after she left Gerald. They encouraged her to reach out to Mindy and Robert again. She said sorry to Robert for dragging Mindy into things. They accepted her apology and invited her to meet their daughter. The meeting went well, and she felt sad that she had missed so much in the past year. Later, she went back to Houston. With some help, she started to teach violin full-time. She also saw a therapist to understand why she had let Gerald control her for so long. After getting back her violin skills, she played sometimes with the Houston Symphony Orchestra and got some of her friends to join her in new charity performances. Then, a new group called the WOW Foundation opened in Houston. Zach and Cassie got married. At their reception, while dancing with Gabriella, Zach said, "Mrs. Ortiz, I grew up in the South with strict parents, so I don't think I could ever call you Gabriella. But if it's okay with you, I'd be honored to call you ma'am." This made her feel proud, and tears filled her eyes. She kissed him on the cheek and said, "I've wanted to hear that from you for a long time." The newlyweds spent their honeymoon in Vienna, enjoying the city and its sights. They felt right at home there. Over time, they had 3 children who were loved by both sets of grandparents. The products they created sold very well. They were so successful that a large company they were up against decided to buy a part of their business and signed a special deal for marketing and selling. A big part of the money from this sale helped to fund a charity that Gabriella started, which Casey later took over. Sam said he would only give money to the fund if he could name it. He chose the name the Walking on Water Foundation because, like Zach, he truly believed his wonderful wife could work miracles and thought it would make a great name for a charity. A few years later, after signing the deal and getting a lot of money, Sam handed over the company to Zach. Over the years, Zach had earned this chance, helping to grow the MRI services business and managing new products. Sadly, they lost Sam when he was 75. He had an aneurysm one night and passed away, but Gabriella was there with him, which was what he wanted. After Sam's passing, Cassie began to help her mom with the foundation and eventually took over its daily management. The foundation's main goal was to help homeless and abused women in Houston. They built a bigger place to shelter women and their children, wanting to make a difference in their lives. The old building was turned into a Montessori school for children from birth to 6th grade. This change helped women to finish their education or gain job skills. Mindy was hired to run the school. Like before, the charity helped provide clothes and meals for the women who came in. This support allowed them to learn skills to avoid going back to the streets or bad relationships. The foundation also helped them start fresh by assisting with buying a good used car, finding work clothes, and getting housing, either on their own or by sharing with another graduate. The program was so successful that it spread to several other cities. Now, Cassie is being recognized for her leadership of the WOW Foundation created by her parents. Lisa convinced some of her friends and students to come and perform for a good cause, healing from the hurt that Gerald caused and that many had overlooked. Cassie also felt inspired to write uplifting articles for the Houston newspaper. She praised and supported local musicians while encouraging people to leave positive reviews and help grow youth programs for young artists. She received many heartfelt letters from those who appreciated her support, including former conductors who had played at charity events that Mindy organized for friends and rarely turned down invitations. Her oldest daughter played the violin that night. Bella played 2 pieces. Melody, Cassie's mother, eventually married Tom, Cassie's younger brother, and they were very happy. After thanking the audience and acknowledging everyone for coming, Cassie finally walked over to her husband and mom, who were deep in conversation. They seemed to always have something to discuss. Cassie thought Tom loved her mother even more than he loved his own brothers. That meant a lot to her. She asked her mother, "Why is it that whenever I leave Zachariah for a few minutes, you are always there with him when I come back?" Her mother replied, "I thought I lost him once, and I would never let that happen again." Zach added, "You never have to worry about that, Mom, because ever since Cassandra saved me from being alone in Vienna, she holds my heart. No matter where I go, I will always come back to her and our family." Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.